Let's remember, when Hitler won his election in 1932, his policy then was that Jews should be moved to Israel. He was supporting Zionism. His boy went mad and ended up killing 6 million Jews.
Disgusting racist. Rewriting history, you're a disgusting racist.
You say it's not true?
Yes, you're a lying racist.
Really? Why don't you go and check
A Nazi
history?
apologist. A
Check
Nazi
history.
apologist.
Check your history.
A Nazi apologist. You're a disgusting Nazi apologist, Livingstone. Rewriting history. Go back and check what Hitler did. Go back and check what Hitler did. There's a book called Mein Kampf. You've obviously never heard of it, written in 1925. Yes, you've never read it. You know nothing about it. You know nothing about what Hitler did in 1932. Dachau concentration camp in his first 50 days. The race purity laws in his first 100 days. And you dare say that Hitler supported Zionism. You've lost it, mate. You need help. You need help. You need help. You need help. Factually wrong. No, factually wrong. Racist remarks.
Go and check your history.
Check my history.
That was the policy they ran on in 32.
His
view was to deport all the Jews of Germany to Israel.
You have lost it.
Is it true or not?
You have lost it. You read the Nazi policy.
Yes.
You read Mein Kampf.
Yes.
What did Mein Kampf say about Zionism?
I mean,
What did Mein Kampf say about Zionism?
Hitler's a mad anti-Zionist. He wanted to kill all Jews. But his policy in 32, when he won that election, was to deport Germany's Jews to Israel. And the Zionist movement had secret meetings with this administration talking about that.
In 1932, coming in, the first thing he did was set up Dachau. The second thing he did was bring the race purist laws targeting, as the state, Jewish businesses.
We all agree on that. Why are you denying what he also ran as the policy in 32?
That wasn't Hitler. You're losing it. You're losing it. You're losing it. You're twisting history.
You've seen the anger.
It is extraordinary.
It
is extraordinary.
But
Rewriting history.
Do you maintain what you said earlier?
Well, go ahead and just check the facts historically. Yes, but I mean, would people be angry if I said we were invaded by the Normans in 1066? You can't deny historical fact.
But those comments have been described as inexcusable, and you should no longer say in the party.
Has your
It's a
organisation with
calculated
its
lie.
budget
It's a
checked to see whether
calculated
it's
lie.
true?
It's a
Because
calculated
why
lie.
don't you come and do an interview
A
with this
calculated
interesting
lie
guy to see whether
by
he thinks it's
conspiracy
true?
theorists. Conspiracy theorists, normally neo-Nazis,
true?
and you're backing conspiracy theorists.
Live on Sky News, you've just been suspended for another year.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that?
I mean, well, as I'm not seeking to return to Parliament or stand for the local council, it doesn't make a great deal of
So
change.
it's quite lenient, because you were expected to be expelled, weren't you?
Well, I felt the whole thing was like, sitting through a court in North Korea. I mean, no one was listening to anything we were actually saying. And we still come back to
So
the
you
basic...
feel like the court, the tribunal's listened to you?
Mr Livingston, what was the reason they gave you for a year-long suspension instead of a...
Well, because I did the Vanessa Feltz interview, and I suppose that is a crime against humanity. And also in defending Naz Shah and saying she wasn't anti-Semitic. But they dropped all the charges that I'm anti-Semitic, or I said Hitler was a Zionist and all that nonsense.
Did they say you brought the party into disrepute and that was the reason for the year-long suspension?
That's basically the logic behind all
And
this.
do you accept that? You accept
No,
you brought
I
the
mean,
party into disrepute?
there's an issue here that matters. Should someone be disciplined for stating a historical truth? And I think that's really important. I'm not going to make an immediate decision. We've got to sit around and think about this to my lawyers.
Can I ask you a question?
Can I ask you a quick question? Are you angry about the decision that's been made today? How do you feel about it?
I would have been angry if I'd been expelled, but, I mean, I don't think anyone expected this result. And that's the simple reality of it.
So what next for you? I know you're considering your options, but
Well,
what
I mean,
are you feeling right
on
now?
the assumption I was going to be expelled, we are planning an immediate judicial review. I think it's still a question that no one should be suspended for stating the truth.
A lot of
I mean, let me just emphasise. I mean, I've been suspended for stating the truth. Labour MPs who tweeted that I was anti-Semitic, I'd said Hitler was a Zionist, I said, you know, that Nazi apologies, all that. No disciplinary action against them. I think that's a double standard that's unacceptable. MPs can't be treated differently from ordinary party members.
Ken, LBC, you spent almost 50 years as part of the Labour Party. You just about stopped short of committing career suicide. You've had a long time to say sorry, a long time to put things right. You've been found guilty of bringing the party into disrepute. Are you ready to say sorry now?
I mean, if I'd said Hitler was a Zionist, I would say sorry.
So
I
still
never
no
said that.
apology? Still no apology?
You can't apologise for telling the truth. I mean,
You can understand that
my problem is, when I left school, I spent 8 years as a cancer research technician. I worked with scientists who taught you, you've got to find the truth. Then I moved into politics, and those aren't the basic rules.
A lot of historians dispute your version of the truth. Will you apologise for the offence that people say you've caused?
I apologise for the offence caused by those Labour MPs who lied and said I said Hitler was a Zionist. But I'm now going to... But hang on. Hang on, I can't hear you all at once.
You have upset people.
No, can I just tell you, in the weeks after my suspension, I couldn't walk down the street. Hundreds and hundreds of people stopping and saying, we know what you said is true, don't give in. 2 occasions in the month, people said, we think you're wrong, you're anti-Semitic. But most people know the truth.
And those who are at the end of this matter, will there be any further court action? Is this the end of this matter now?
No, I need to think about that, because I do think it's important that the Labour Party should not expel or suspend people for telling the truth. I came into politics. I mean, can you find anything in my past where I didn't say the truth? That's what's important.
Ken, what did the NCC actually say to you? What did they actually say to you?
Well, they said that because of my long history of contribution to the party, they were going to suspend me for another year.
A recently released video from Al Jazeera shows an Israeli diplomat and an aide to a conservative member of the UK Parliament discussing plans to take down British politicians deemed hostile to the interests of the State of Israel. Let's have a quick listen.
He was an MP that I suggest you would take down?
Well, if you look hard enough, I'm sure that there is something that we're trying to hide.
Yeah, I have some MPs.
Let's talk about it.
Okay. No, she knows which MP won the question.
Yeah, it's good to remind me.
The Deputy Foreign Minister.
This one too.
It doesn't matter.
We still want to.
No, he's doing a lot of programs.
I thought we had
Like a conspiracy.
neutralized it a little bit, no?
This is Israel a few days ago, the season of Passover. And this is Germany 51 years ago, the blossoming of Adolf Hitler's springtime. A key factor in the vitality of today's Israel, the book's author argues, was an agreement reached in 1933 between a group of Zionists and the man who would later try to kill every living Jew.
The great irony is that Adolf Hitler became the chief economic sponsor of the State of Israel.
It will be an argument against, and a wrong argument against Zionists.
Dr. Stephen S. Wise, rabbi of the Free Synagogue and a national leader of liberal thought, speaks in behalf of the Jews of the United States.
This is not a Jewish meeting. This is the conscience of America making itself felt.
conscience of Nazi Germany made itself felt 5 days later. Across the Reich, Hitler's troops shut down Jewish-owned businesses for 24 hours. Within days, American Jews marched calling for the boycott of all German exports. Jews throughout Europe echoed that call, so did Jews everywhere. But a group of Zionists at the same time was quietly negotiating an agreement with the Nazis to allow the immigration of German Jews and the transfer of their assets to Palestine. That deal, reported in August 1933, was the transfer agreement. Palestine, sparsely settled by Jews at the time, was radically changed as a result.
I lived in Palestine from 1933 to 1936, and we saw every week transports of German Jews coming to settle in Palestine. Many new professions were introduced by them into the country, and they played a leading role in making Palestine then a more advanced and progressive country.
Israel is really what it is because of the foundation laid by the Eastern European group, and then the lift toward an educated and well-organized government that came with the immigration of the German Jewish group.
German Jewish settlement of Palestine was, for a time, official Nazi policy. These photos of Jewish life in Palestine, along with a lengthy text, appeared in 1934 in the Berlin paper Der Angriff. The publisher, Hitler's propaganda minister, Joseph Goebbels. A Nazi Visits Palestine was the title of the multi-part series. A medal was struck by Goebbels in commemoration. On one side, the swastika. On the other, the Star of David. Hitler demanded one concession for the transfer agreement, that the call for a boycott of the Reich, raised by Jews here and elsewhere, be rejected by the Zionists. The Zionists made that concession. And so, while Nazis were marching in Germany, and while Jews were marching here, diplomacy was running a more important story. In the Mediterranean, where the dream of a nation-state for Jewish people came a step closer to reality. The story in this book some will find hard to accept.
Provided a link to a page that was claiming that Hitler was, in fact, was trying to get rid of the Rothschilds from Germany. Which I think is a complete and utter load of baloney, not only because Hitler was a Rothschild, the son of Alois Hitler, who was himself the illegitimate child of Maria Anna Schicklgruber, who happened to be a servant girl who got pregnant whilst working at the mansion of Baron Rothschild. Oh, an illegitimate son of a servant girl of Baron Rothschild, and his son ends up becoming Hitler. Yeah, funny how that works, isn't it? Hitler and the Nazis were 100% completely and utterly set up and made it into what they were by the international banking community and the international crony capitalists, including those in America. 100% documentable and on the record. You can look at all of the various connections, and they're deep and multiplicitous. So I'll include some links into some of what I'm about to just go over in passing here, because there is extremely important, and I think I'll have to put this together into a more coherent presentation at some point. But for example, you have the so-called Young Plan, which was enacted in 1930. It was part of the wrangling over German reparations and how are they going to pay, and they're failing in their payments, so how do we get this going? So the Young Plan was enacted. It was named after the president of General Electric at the time, who went by the name of Young. It was also funded into existence with the help of J.P. Morgan, and this Young Plan was enacted in 1930 just as the international banking system was collapsing. Germany went into its Weimar hyperinflationary struggle, so they had to give it a year off of reparation payments. It ended up repudiating the reparations and never going back. The Young Plan was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back during that period. So General Electric and J.P. Morgan helped to set up the downfall of the German banking system, which it led to the rise of Hitler and the Nazis. And I think we know that connection. But interestingly enough, one of the interesting aspects of that is that one of the bodies that was set up as the facilitator of the Young Plan was the Bank for International Settlements, BIS, in Basel, Switzerland, the central bank of the central bankers. And this is the body that, for example, was specifically identified by Carroll Quigley in Tragedy and Hope as the arm, the body, the institution through which the powers of international capital had a far-reaching aim, nothing less than the consolidation of total global control over the financial order. Or I can't remember the exact quote off the top of my head, but that famous quote about the powers of international capital having a far-reaching aim, directly talking about the Bank for International Settlements that was enacted as a result of this Young Plan. You can also look to Carroll Quigley to talk, who talks about how the Milner Group specifically was looking, which was one of the agents, the bodies that were created through the last will and testament of Cecil Rhodes back in the late part of the 19th century to create the global secret society structure. And the Milner Group talked about how they had to get Germany and Russia fighting for each other, fighting for control over Eastern Europe so they could more effectively divide and conquer them. So they openly talked about having to set up, and this was years and years before Hitler even arrived on the scene. They were talking about how they'd have to build up a tyrant and set him up to fail in Germany. And that's, lo and behold, exactly what ended up happening. So throughout the 1930s, after the collapse of the banking system, the Weimar hyperinflation cycle, the rise of the Nazis, there's this myth that the neo-Nazis put out there that, oh, Germany turned it around by turning to National Socialism, and they cleaned up their banking and they kicked out the Rothschilds, and suddenly they had a vibrant economy, which again is total bunk. Their economy was 100% supported by Wall Street and the Wall Street cronies, including Standard Oil in cooperation with IG Farben, which created the synthetic oil without which the German military literally could not have functioned. You have Ford, you have General Electric, you have DuPont, all of those companies in there with their production facilities, with the American loans and funding flowing into them, IBM and the Hollerith machines, all of those connections 100% firmly embedded in Germany. And then, as Anthony Sutton has talked about, and again, you have to read Wall Street and the Rise of Hitler for all of the deep connections that he uncovered, but including, of course, things like, the plants and factories of these American corporations in Germany were specifically not bombed during the saturation bombing of Germany. So you had, for example, the General Electric plants, one of them completely unscathed. Several of the others had minor shrapnel damage and windows blown out and the like from bombing going on around them. Or the Ford plant in Cologne, the largest Ford plant in the country, and one that the Allies specifically knew was creating machinery and weaponry for the German Wehrmacht, specifically avoided by the Allied bombers. So again, we know that American industry and finance was helping the German war machine the entire time. There was the connections that lasted all the way up through the 1940s. We know, for example, the Bush family, Bush Harriman, the banking brothers were helping to fund Hitler through the back door, and that's been, we've talked about that in previous editions of the Corbett Report. There's a very, very, very big picture that I'm attempting to at least paint the broad outlines of here, that Hitler was 100% supported by the banking oligarchy, 100% supported by the financiers and the capitalists from America, and absolutely set up to be the tyrannical dictator that they could fight against that would cause, well, everything that World War II caused, including, of course, the aftermath and the creation of the United Nations, which came out of the CFR study group that was funded by the Rockefellers. I mean, there's so many connections here that even beginning to say this in a general way is so much. So I'll include, I don't know, as many links as possible in the show notes so you can follow the threads of the story I'm saying. And as I say, I'll have to put this together into a coherent presentation at some point. But the idea that Hitler was fighting against the Rothschilds and was really against the banking oligarchy is neo-Nazi propaganda, completely, utterly fake. And this should not, of course, be interpreted as an apologia in any way for Hitler or the Nazis. Of course it isn't. So again, so much to go through with this question. But suffice it to say, no, I don't think that Hitler was really against the banking oligarchy. He was a product of it. And to what extent he was a willing dupe, a knowing dupe, whatever the case is, the neo-Nazi propaganda about this is totally off base.
1893. העיתונאי תיאודור הרצל, יהודי מלידה אבל נאמן מסור לתרבות הגרמנית, מציע הצעה משלו לפתרון שאלת היהודים. הוא יזמין את האפיפיור בשם אחוות הגזעים להטביל לנצרות את כל יהודי אוסטריה בטקס מיוחד שיערך בכנסיית סן סטפן שבווינה. וכך הוא כותב ביומנו: בערך לפני 2 חפצתי לפתור את שאלת היהודים, לכל הפחות באוסטריה, בעזרת הכנסייה הקתולית. ביקשתי להבטיח לעצמי בראשונה את עזרת נסיכי הכנסייה באוסטריה ולהשיג על ידיהם ראיון אצל האפיפיור כדי להגיד לו: עזור לנו מפני האנטישמים, ואני מחולל תנועה כבירה בין היהודים, שיעברו באופן חופשי וגאה לנצרות. הרצל גם מתאר בפרטי פרטים את תוכנית ההתנצרות ההמונית המתוכננת. המרת הדת תתבצע לאור היום ביום ראשון בצהריים בקתדרלת סטפן הקדוש, בתהלוכה חגיגית ובצלצולי פעמונים. לא בחשאי, כפי שנהגו יהודים לעשות עד עתה, אלא בגאון. העובדה שמנהיגים יקיימו את יהדותם וילוו את העם עד שערי הכנסייה, תעניק כנות רבה למעמד. אנחנו שעמדנו איתן, הננו הדור האחרון הדבק באמונת אבותינו, אבל רצינו להפוך את בנינו הצעירים לנוצרים לפני שיגיעו לגיל התבונה, שבו המרת הדת לובשת צורה של מורח לב. הרצל נולד בשנת 1860, למשפחה מתבוללת מן העיר בודפסט שבהונגריה. לאחר מכן השתקעה המשפחה בווינה. הרצל, שחונך ברוח ההשכלה והקדמה אשר נשבה ברחוב הווינאי, העריץ את התרבות הנוכרית ושאף בכל מאודו להיות חלק ממנה. הרצל לקה למעשה באותה מחלה בה לקו רבים מקרב המתבוללים היהודים, אשר ראו בנוכרי ובתרבותו את התגלמות האידיאל האנושי. ההתבוללות הייתה עבורו הדרך להגשים אידיאל זה. כחניך התרבות האוסטרית, ביקש הרצל להצניע את יהדותו ולהבליט את עובדת היותו גרמני-אוסטרי. ואכן, כל החיים התנהג הרצל כאילו היה שכזה. הוא העריץ את המוזיקה של וגנר, ראה בביסמרק מנהיג למופת, הזדהה עם הלאומניות הגרמנית המתחזקת, ששנים מאוחר יותר הוציאה לפועל את חוקי נירנברג. הכניסה יהודים לגטאות וביצעה את תוכנית הפתרון הסופי בשואה. הרצל בז לכל מי שלא נחשב בעיניו מודרני, תרבותי, נאצל ונאור. בראש ובראשונה היו אלה אותם יהודים בני עמו שומרי תורה ומסורת. הוא הפנים יסודות ורעיונות אנטישמיים כפי שבאים לידי ביטוי ביומנו ובמאמריו. הכמרים הנוצרים הם ברום המדרגה, מפני שאינם להוטים אחרי הכסף. הנוצרים הפשוטים טובים הם מכמרי היהודים. יחס זה חושף למעשה את הפן האנטישמי בתורת הרצל. בדעה זו גלומים רעיונות אנטישמיים המציירים את היהודים כנושאי הרע, ולעומתם הגויים שיא התואר והשלמות. כך למשל כתב במאמרו בדויטשה צייטונג: היהודים העשירים שולטים על העולם. בידם גורל ממשלות ומדינות. הם מגרים ממשלות זו בזו, ועל פקודתם ממשלות עושות שלום. מתי שהיהודים העשירים מנגנים, העמים והמושלים מרקדים. בין כך ובין כך הם מתעשרים. הרצל מספק תימוכין ולגיטימציה לרדיפה האנטישמית ואף מעודד אותה. אכן האנטישמיות, שהיא כוח חזק ומושרש בתת ההכרה של ההמונים, לא תזיק ליהודים. אני מוצא שהיא מועילה לבניית האופי היהודי. חינוך הקבוצה על ידי ההמון. חינוך שעשוי להוביל להתבוללותה. החינוך מתבצע רק באמצעות תלאות. היהודים הסתגלו. רעיון מצוין עולה בליבי, למשוך אנטישמים ישרים ולעשותם מחסלי הרכוש היהודי.
יש פה משפט, אני רוצה שתקרא אותו בקול ותגיד לי מי היה יכול להגיד דבר כזה.
איפה?
זה.
רעיון מצוין עולה בליבי למשוך אנטישמים ישרים ולעשותם מחסלי הרכוש היהודי.
מי היה יכול להגיד דבר כזה?
אני יכול לקרוא את המשפט שוב? אני לא יודע, בטח היטלר, מלחמת העולם השנייה, דברים כאלה.
רעיון מצוין עולה בליבי למשוך אנטישמים ישרים ולעשותם מחסלי רכוש יהודי.
מי יכול להגיד דבר כזה?
היטלר.
היטלר?
היטלר. רעיון מצוין עולה בליבי למשוך אנטישמים ישרים ולעשותם מחסלי הרכוש היהודי.
מי אתה חושב יכול להגיד דבר כזה?
היטלר.
אם הייתי אומר לך שהרצל חוזה המדינה אמר את זה, היית מאמין לי? לא. אם אני אומר לך שהרצל אמר את זה?
אז אני בשוק.
אם הייתי אומר לך שהרצל אמר את זה, מאמינה לי?
לא.
אבל לפי דעתי כאילו יותר כדי לזכור את הרצל בתור דמות חיובית... אתה לא חושב שזה ניסיון מכוון להסתיר מכם משהו שהם לא רוצים שתדעו? יכול להיות, אתה יודע מה? חושב שצריך ללמד את זה?
לא יודעת, אולי.
כן, בטח. בטח שצריך, אנשים צריכים לדעת האמת.
אם אני אומר לך שהרצל אמר את זה, זה מתוך היומנים שלו.
אז חבל, אז הרצל היה אנטישמי.
להבדיל, 30 שנה מאוחר יותר, נאמרו דברים ברוח זו על ידי חוזה אחר, שהופיע כמושיע לעמו על בימת ההיסטוריה. ובשנת 1927, בעת שריצה עונש מאסר בכלא לנצברג שבגרמניה, כתב בספרו מיין קאמפף על יהדות הממון שמסכסכת בין אומות העולם, ומביאה אותם לידי מלחמות, כאשר המרוויח הוא היהודי. כאמור, הרצל, שהריץ את התרבות הנוכרית ורצה בכל מאודו להיות חלק ממנה, ביקש לפתור את הדילמה האישית שלו ואת רתיעתו משורשיו היהודיים על ידי התנצרות המונית. אכול שנאה עצמית הנובעת מעצם יהדותו, ראה בבעיה גם את הפתרון, לחדול להיות יהודי וכך לפתור את הבעיה אחת ולתמיד. אני רואה את עצמי כיהודי מודרני ממוצע, ואין אני נרתע ממעבר פורמלי לנצרות. אני מברך על כל יהודי שיש לו ילדים המחליט להתנצר. לי יש בן. הייתי מעדיף להתנצר היום ולא מחר, כדי שתקופת החברות שלו בנצרות תתחיל מוקדם ככל האפשר, וכדי לחסוך ממנו את הפגיעות ואת הקיפוח שנפלו בחלקי, ושעוד יפלו בחלקי בגלל היותי יהודי. בשנת 1894 הואשם קצין יהודי בכיר בצבא צרפת בבגידה. שמו של הקצין, אלפרד דרייפוס. האנטישמיות הסמויה, שרחשה מתחת לפני השטח, פרצה החוצה. מכל השדים האנטישמי החל שוב. רק אז השתכנע הרצל שפתרון ההתבוללות אינו מעשי, וכי העולם הנוצרי שאותו חיבב כל כך, אינו מוכן לפתוח זרועותיו בפני יהודים כמותו. רק אז הפנה מרצו ונרתם להתוויית הרעיון של מדינה ליהודים ולמשנתו הציונית אותה ניסח באלטנוילנד. אבל גם אז המניע לציונותו של הרצל לא צמח מתוך אהבה ודאגה ליהודים, אלא מאי הנוחות שאלה גורמים ליהודים גויים נאורים כדוגמתו. את מדינת היהודים האוטופית דואג הרצל לבנות על פי המודל החדש, מודל שמשליך מעליו כל סממן יהודי. כמובן שעליו לזכור להשיל מעליו כמה תכונות יהודיות שליליות כמו שפת היידיש, קיום מצוות ומנהגים, ובעיקר את הטפילות היהודית.
Berlin, April 30th, 1945. Russian soldiers entered the most secured bunker in Germany and found the bodies of German soldiers and SS officers. Another 2 bodies were discovered, charred, beyond recognition. These were the supposed bodies of Adolf Hitler and Eva Braun. A few months later, new testimonials emerged from people who admit to seeing Hitler 1,000 kilometers away from Europe, in South America, Argentina. Was Hitler's suicide faked? Perhaps Hitler organized a way to flee Europe. Maybe Adolf Hitler lived a very quiet life in South America until his death in 1965. May 1945, the end of World War II, the end of the Third Reich. Europe is free again. The Allies publish an official declaration that they found the bodies of Adolf Hitler and Eva Braun. Patrick Burnside, researcher and author of the book Hitler Escapes, has posed many questions about the investigation of Hitler's death.
Cualquier situazione policial di un evento donde hay un suicidio, donde hay una muerte, se investiga. En este caso no se investigó. Se investigó menos de cualquier evento, de cualquier nazione, de cualquier policía del mundo. Cioè no se abrieron expediente, se encargó un jovencito que en su época fue el mayor Trevor Roper, que era un recién neolaureado en historia, de investigar bonariamente la muerte de Hitler, porque da todo lado se decía que Hitler no había muerto y se había escapado, da todo lado. Fueron franceses, fueron rusos, fueron cualquier nazione beligerante, dijo la suya.
In a meeting between Stalin and American Secretary of State James Burns a few weeks later, after the war ended, Stalin said, almost certainly, Hitler escaped to Argentina. In the meantime, President Roosevelt formed a unit of the FBI to investigate Hitler's whereabouts. Catalina Gamero was one of the workers in the Hotel Eden who worked for the Eichhorns since she was an adolescent. She told us that she served for 3 days a very special guest of the Eichhorn couple, Adolf Hitler. This was during 1947.
Estuvo Hitler ahí, sí. Estuvo 3 días, eso yo sí. Eso yo porque vimos los choferes y todo, el padre Mónica también, pero nosotros teníamos que callarlo la boca. O perdíamos el trabajo y después lo agarré a Luis yo y le digo, che Luis, cállate, me dice, no digas nada. Y si usted, ahí había foto de él y después uno por más que no tenga video.
Additional to Gamero's testimony, there is the testimonial of Hernan Ancin, who is a carpenter of Ante Pavelic, a Nazi leader in Croatia, who lived in Mar del Plata, Argentina, during the 1950s.
Hitler. Y debe haber sido fines del 53.
¿Y en qué circunstancias?
Vino ahí, venía.
¿A dónde?
Al edificio a hablar con Pavelic. Venía caminando con los 3 guardaespaldas y la señora. Prácticamente lo traían caminando, ¿no? Que apenas caminaba él.
¿Tenía la misma pinta?
La misma, de blanco, pelo corto, tipo militar, cortado, sin bigote. Bueno, ahí estuve yo conversando, me invitaron a sentarme en la mesa, me convidó la señora de Pavelic con un café. Hitler estaba tomando café con alguna bebida más con Pavelic. Y yo ahí le conté. Entonces, Pavelic le dice a Hitler, es el carpintero, dice, que me hace la carpintería en el edificio. Entonces Hitler me miró y me hizo una reverencia así, en esta forma. Un saludo, ¿no? Más cerca de él. Estuve tomando café, inclusive.
¿Usted está convencido que era Hitler?
Sí, sí.